My name is Sarah. I am the founder and lead coach at Teal Legacies, where I coach young and pivoting professionals hoping to enter the themed entertainment industry. I am also an intern at Disney, and I'm getting my PhD at the University of Central Florida. Tonight, depending where you are, we're going to be focusing on Black History Month and themed entertainment. We have a panel of lovely, interesting, and generous industry professionals. And special shout out to Jeff Crocker for organizing this. Thank you very much. I am going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves, and we'll go clockwise from where I'm sitting. So we're going to start with Theron.
Hi, everyone. My name is Theron Langhorne. I'm a concept artist here at Adrenalin Attractions. My whole life, I have been involved with theme park design. I've wanted to design a theme park since I was 6 years old. And I have been involved in the creation of my own theme parks all through high school, elementary school, junior high school. And I've always known that I want to be a Walt Disney Imagineer. So things didn't work out exactly like they were supposed to. I went to college. I graduated from Laguna College of Art Design in 2004. Worked at Gary Goddard, went to RGH. I started working as a freelance illustrator for different companies. I worked for Beesart, Zeitgeist, Storyline Studios, and Brian Mara Productions. And now I'm here at this job and I'm really enjoying it. So my whole life, I've just always loved drawing and designing and doing anything in the theme park community. And so once I started joining TEA a few years ago, then I started getting in touch with a lot of people in the industry. And here I am doing a panel on Black History Month. So I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Thank you. Kevin, you're next.
Hi, my name is Kevin Bouchette. I work currently at Walt Disney Imagineering as inclusive strategy development designer, super long title. But what I predominantly focus on actually is how to create experiences for the Disney brand that are more relevant to audiences who may not necessarily always see themselves in the Disney brand, right? Whether it be experientially or brand-wise. So how can we create products and experiences, I think, that connect to them? And so with that being said, I kind of wear many hats, including work that is outside of our parks, inside of our parks, and in consumer products. Most recently, we just kind of started traveling this traveling exhibition experience called Soul of Jazz during the pandemic. And so that was pretty successful and I'm looking to continue to build on that. I started my career like Theron, very much interested in theme parks. Like him, I always wanted to be a Disney Imagineer, and I always love storytelling. I love the idea that storytelling can transport you, physical storytelling can transport you to a place and excite the imagination and spark new possibilities in the mind. And so that's always been something that I've kind of strived for, is how do we create more amazing experiences that get people excited and I don't know, just energized and connected, connect with their family and friends together in that moment. So.
Thank you. And Niyia.
Hi there. My name is Niyia Mack, and I am a creative producer with Meow. I'm currently based in Santa Fe. And my role primarily entails working with our internal artists to bring their vision to life. I mainly manage scope, scale, and budget for several different projects on our Grapevine exhibition that's opening this summer, actually. And my story that landed me in themed entertainment / at Meow is I come from traditional theater. And I've spent a lot of time both on stage and off the stage just learning more about live events, how to produce, how to work with talent of all types. And I find that skill set has helped me a lot in my producer role. So in my time, I've worked in New York and LA with several different companies. Some of note would be Pasadena Playhouse. I worked with, consulted with New Balance, and done a couple of activations with an immersive casting agency called Meta for You, based in Los Angeles. Also worked on a couple of other immersive experiences that were that started in New York and then ended up in LA, one being Carrie the musical, if anybody's ever seen that one. So yeah, that's a bit of backstory about me, and yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. So the way this is going to work, I have a couple questions to like get us flowing. It should be a conversation, hopefully, and we will have time for questions at the end. So if you have questions, write those down. And we'll start with a big overall question. Anyone can take it. What does Black History Month mean to you?
To me, I think it feels more of an opportunity to learn more about our history and what our people have done over the centuries. That's just like a basic version of what Black History Month is, but to me, I feel it's an opportunity to change who I am, because there's some things I didn't know about my history that I'm still learning. So absorbing this knowledge and absorbing history and learning about all the different things that my ancestors have done, it strengthens me to change the way I think, because I've always had like a self-deprecating personality sometimes back in the past. Not so much anymore. I mean, it's fading over time, but the things that they have experienced in the past do not compare to the things I experience now, because there's a lot more outside friction that they have than I have now. I have more internal friction with things that stop me from learning things that I want to learn, just not believing in myself. And I think over time, I help strengthen myself by learning more about other people and the things that they've gone through. And it just makes my struggles seem minuscule in comparison to what they've gone through. So I felt like it made me a lot stronger, and it's humbled me and helped me to take on courage and just do what I need to do.
Beautiful.
I would say for me, Black History Month is an opportunity for our history and our culture and us as a people to be recognized in a larger way. Similar to what Theron is saying, like these conversations are happening on a micro level all the time in people's homes and communities. But I feel like this month is an opportunity to just dig a bit deeper, learn more, grow more, expand, build more community, and yeah, have a larger conversation about any of the issues that we continue to face.
Yeah, personally, I agree with that. I mean, just to hook a little bit with what Theron was saying around strength, I think Black history is a very long history, right? Like many other cultures. And you realize, I think, the perseverance that Black people have gone through over the years. But with that being said, not only the perseverance as it relates kind of an emotional standpoint, but I would just say just in terms of like advancement, right? Technical advancement, creative advancement. And it's empowering, I think, to think about where we all come from and what's inside of us as individuals and human beings. And so I think Black History Month, like many other cultural history months, are a reminder of what is in us as human beings to have positive change in the world. And even at times when, or the days that we feel small, there's definitely big impact that we can make and create.
So on that topic, why talk about things like race when we are in the themed entertainment industry? Why does it matter?
I think it matters that all people are represented, no matter what we do. In terms of entertainment and design, we don't really see a lot of our people that look like us in this field. I mean, we're still breaking into the field a lot more now, but in the beginnings, you didn't really see that much color. But now it just seems like there's more of an opening there, that there's more accessibility, there's more representation, and it strengthens our younger people that are trying to break into the field, that hey, it's okay to be crazy. It's okay to have these weird ideas. It's okay to have these scary characters and these weird, outrageous stories. And, people, it doesn't matter where you come from. I mean, people will recognize you for what's in your mind, not for just what's on your skin. So I think that's what people need to understand now, that now we are more concerned about your creativity and what your mind can produce, not only what your skin is, that even though that is important, that you still stand as a representative of your community, but it's more important to represent yourself as a creative individual.
I'll also just say, just like in life, our experiences are not the same and they're very unique. And they come with a unique voice, they come with unique tone, they come with unique language and everything in between. So I think race is important because it just brings a richness to whatever work is going to be created. It to Theron's point, it creates more opportunity for representation, which then helps a younger class of people, or a younger group of people see themselves and see what a career path could look like for them. Yeah, I would just say it matters because our experience in life as a Black person and our experience at work as a Black person is not detached. They are connected. So it doesn't make sense to ignore that in the professional setting, in my mind.
And for me, I think there's just a huge opportunity, right? Like I remember the first time I went to a Disney park, right? Which is like my first theme park ever, which I was super young. And it was during Christmas time. And I just remember walking down, Main Street, and all the lights and garlands are all put up. And all of a sudden, it's 70 degrees outside, but all of a sudden, the snow comes down from the ceiling. And I remember in that moment, the power of experience, because I remember how happy it made my family. And when I think about the power of this medium of themed entertainment, especially as it relates to race, is one of, I think, our goals as designers is try to figure out how to make the world a better place. And I think the key word in that is world, because many people come from many different backgrounds. And so it's important to talk about race or culture or many of these other things, because in order for us to make the world a better place, I think we have to understand where everyone's coming from and how to authentically connect with that or represent that within the experiences that we create. And so for me, I think it's really about the opportunity, but also I think kind of going back a little bit, it is a reminder in some cases how much work we still have to go do in order to create that opportunity, because you just can't create that opportunity with what we have today or yesterday. And so trying to figure out how we can close those gaps in order to build that opportunity that exists in front of us to really make the world a better place.
Love that. We mentioned the next generation a little bit. How do we make themed entertainment a more welcoming industry? Because it is, I don't know if you know this, it's a little hard to break into. How can we make it more welcoming, especially to Black youth who want to get in?
I've always thought that it would be more important to focus on gaining your inner strength, because in this industry, it is not going to go the way you planned it. It's not going to, you can't like graduate college and get a job right out of college, because I didn't get my first job after graduation for like 4 years. And I was on the verge of giving up because I just thought maybe I'm not good enough. I mean, maybe no one likes my stuff. And when I was looking at other artists' work, I would be looking at Greg Pro and Eric Heschong and Dan Gouze, and I'm like, there's no way I can compete with that. But I thought I had to be at that level in order to work in the field. But the truth is, you don't know what kind of companies, what kind of work they're looking for. You don't know what style they're looking for, what type of people they're looking for, because everyone needs something different to communicate their message. And so I just learned, do not give up on yourself, because what you offer, what you bring to the table is exactly what people are looking for. They're looking for ingenuity, genuineness, things that are truthful to you. They hire people. They just don't hire talent. They hire people. So if you are a good person and you understand how you work in the industry and how you can roll with the punches and still be creative, you're the type of personality that people are going to be looking for. So it's just all about self-improvement and believing in yourself, like I said before, because if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will.
And I think for me, it's like going back to what you were saying there a little bit, like you kind of have to believe in your story and own your story a little bit. I think when you're younger, like when I was younger and I knew about theme parks and I knew about Imagineers, I didn't know the first thing I needed to go do become an Imagineer or a theme park industry, right? There's no pamphlet that says, read this to become, right? And
I still don't
I
know.
remember as I got older, they came out with the big Imagineering book that said, oh, we have 120 disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
And, it opened up a little bit, but you still don't really know how to get in because at the essence of what we do, I think it sits outside of, it's probably the closest thing I think is probably in the theater world, but I still think it sits outside of specific subject matter expertise. Because what we do, I think, is so experiential, not only for actors, but for the guests. And it's about creating engagement. And I know recently they've been crediting majors and things like that, but it's really unique blend of a whole bunch of different skill sets. And I think a lot of times as we grow older, we kind of get boxed into a specific skill set, which I think is important to lead in with. But I think one of the most powerful things to learn is that I don't think there's one way to go do something. I think it goes back to what Theron was saying. I think it is, it's cliche, but I think it is in many ways following your passion, but not in a sense of like, oh, my passion is to be an architect, but like if your passion is to create great places, right? Like, I don't think you need to be an architect to create great places. You could be a storyteller and create great places, right? You could be a theater person and create great places. The real thing that should be focused on is I want to figure out what makes a great place. And I think that translates, as you build your portfolio and things like that into the world that we do. Or I want to make a great ride, right? Like you could do that through mechanical engineering, you do that through show set. It doesn't matter which path you choose, but like what makes a great ride. And so to me, I think that's what should be more, I guess, communicated to younger talent who are looking to get in. It really is, I think, owning your story and your passion and all the things that come with that.
Great answers. Great answers. I'm just going to say my yes and to that, because my mind is going to a practical place, is I am a huge advocate and I attribute my path to being here now to internships and mentorships. I can't say that enough. I feel like the conversation is not just about breaking in. If you're interested in getting into themed entertainment, it's about what do you want to do? What is your passion? What do you contribute and how does that translate into a role? What is the professional atmosphere that you thrive well in? Because not every company is the same. So I just think having somebody that can talk to you from a professional place, has an investment in your growth, they can sort of give you some insight on what to expect, and they can demystify a lot of the things that you might not know until you get your first interview, and then all of a sudden you're a new employee and those questions just haven't been answered. So I think my mind just goes to if you feel like you've been in conversation with somebody that or that you've made a connection with somebody and there might be the opportunity for you to learn from them. It doesn't have to be called a mentorship and it doesn't have to be that formal, but whatever that connection looks like, I think that's important. I think I liken it to when a chef can stage in a restaurant. I wish there were more opportunities like that. But when you can just be in the kitchen, see what it looks like, see if it's a good fit, and then maybe back out if it's not a good fit. I don't know what the equivalent of that looks like, but I think a mentor can at least give you a little behind the scenes intel on what to expect and what to really go after, and the things that you can sort of the things that you can expect along the journey. Because again, it's unique when you're the only Black queer woman in a lot of rooms. in my case. So, you know what I mean? I have unique experience in that. So those are my thoughts.
So,
And I think it's really important to have a primary skill set that you're good at. You should hone your talents, hone your skill in doing what you really like to do, but you must be open to doing new things. You must be able to get out of your comfort zone, because once people learn that you can do this, they may want you to do this. And then if you can do that good, they may want you to do this. When you do what's expected of you, people will expect more from you. And I think you have to be open to doing different type of tasks at the job. Like once you have your portfolio ready, have all your work all in line, all your pictures nice and pretty, or whatever you want to do, whatever passion, whatever career that you choose, you all ready to get yourself into the workforce. But when someone hires you, they may hire you to do something completely different from what you've been trained to do. And you have to be open to learn. And that's once you start learning new things, people will see that you are versatile in the field, and you kind of open up your opportunities to get more work in the field. And then, you start learning how to do more things. And, once you start learning how to do more things, you have more options to get work. So I think you have to be open to learning new things all the time, but be good at one skill, be really good at that, but be open to learn more stuff too.
wonderful. Y'all are saying so many good things. Like I'm writing so much down. I have a question about having those shared experiences, especially ones that we're trying to share with guests. Do your identities, whether it is race, gender, etc., do those play into the experiences you create, and how?
I think personally, I'm an illustrator, and I've noticed that like over the past couple of years, since the LGBT community has been raising its voice, we're identifying with them. I see a lot more in ads and commercials about seeing different ethnicities, as well as different like gay couples, lesbian couples, mixed couples in commercials and ads. And so when I do my illustrations, I make sure to show that in the people. Make sure I show like same-sex couples, people in wheelchairs, different ethnicities, all enjoying the same activity. And after a while, you don't really think about it. You just know that's your audience. Those are the people, those are your demographics. Because people from all different areas of life are going to be enjoying these different activities, these different experiences. And so you just have to keep that in mind when you're illustrating it.
Love that, Theron. I have so many stories, by the way, that as we've at Disney, we've kind of released a more recent concept art and increased diversity, the amount of kids that, if you put a wheelchair, for example, or a kid with a wheelchair in a piece of concept art, how many kids react to that in a very positive way. And it kind of felt seen. But I would say, to answer your question, I would say more recently, my identity has gone into projects. It's hard to give specific examples only because the projects are confidential, and the ones that I have done thus far, like for example, Tiana's Bayou Adventures is kind of a good one, or the Tiana's Royal Palace that they're opening up in Disneyland. Like personally for me, my background, my family's from Louisiana, and share a lot of the same story as Tiana and her family. And so I think when we talk about telling those stories, the unique thing about, I think, a theme park or a themed entertainment type space is that we can tell a lot more backstory than probably what we could do in film, right? Hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of film. And it creates an opportunity to create conversation. And so I think we've created an opportunity to bring in stories of identity and contributions of the New Orleans story into the world of Tiana. Stories that you might not even hear, but it's stories that make it quintessentially New Orleans, which also at times that's quintessentially Black, but it also might be at times other cultures, because New Orleans is so diverse. And so I think when a person from New Orleans, Louisiana would ride this attraction, they would feel seen in a way that I think if a person who didn't bring any identity to this experience, right, they would not connect as well, right? And so I think that's kind of an opportunity to unlock, if you will, in attractions going forward, is that you have an opportunity in every experience that you create to go deep. And a lot of times what we actually find, I think, when you go deep in stories, is that a lot of people actually have very shared experiences, even though it may be on the other side of the coin, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all human. And so, in many ways, we've learned that I think specificity brings generality, if that makes sense. And it makes us realize we're all connected. So with that being said, I think more recently, we focus more on putting more identity, I think, in the stories that people have into the projects that we're developing, at least at Disney.
Sarah, would you mind to repeat the question for me?
Yeah, no
Please,
problem.
and thank you. Okay.
Of course, that's why I wrote it down. Do your identities, as many as you have, do they play into the experiences that you create?
Yes, they do. I would say just in a lot of conversations that we're always having about accessibility in our design, about creating environments where all people can come and enjoy it and sort of get lost in the story. I feel like I'm able to bring a perspective of how someone with my identities might perceive a certain piece of art or how they might experience something. And I'm grateful to be in an environment where that's heard, that lands, and sometimes it can make a change. So yeah, I would say it does impact my work.
Awesome.
And I think to add on to that, I just want to say that there are certain, things you have to be careful of too, in terms of design. Like you can have different symbols or different epitaphs or hieroglyphics that pertain to a certain culture. When you're trying to draw something that has to do with the future, it may not be consistent or respectful to a certain culture. So you have to be careful about what you're implementing into a design, because there's so many different cultures that we are privy to now. We're open to learning anything on the planet, basically. So if you're going to try to make something based on a culture or a certain type of tribe or anything like that, the way you represent it is what matters the most, because you want to make it into a positive light and not in a way that's demeaning to those people or to that culture.
And I would just add for that, where possible, if you don't have someone from that culture on your team, or that find ways that you can invite people from that culture to the table.
Yeah.
I think it's critical. Going back to what Theron just said.
Because it's like you're trying to design something that represents a Native American culture or some people from a certain type of island, and then you don't have any of those people there on the design team. It's kind of, it's not cool, basically, because you're trying to represent something you don't know anything about it. All you know is what you learn from books and the internet, but you have to learn it straight from the people that live that culture.
And it may not, I would just add, it may not feel like a big deal, because I think, use a Native American idea. Like initially, if you were to design something without Native Americans, a person who may not be from Native American culture might just be, to your point, may not necessarily take it the wrong way. But I think the tribes who have a long lineage and history, who walk through that same experience, would take it an entirely different way. And so again, as we think about expanding our audiences for the products and experiences that we create, I think it becomes very critical that those voices get kept, be at the table.
Makes it authentic and not performative.
Yeah.
Right.
So now I'm curious, is there a particular themed experience or attraction where you have felt particularly seen that just made you go, oh,
Like a ride or a movie?
anything, anything, if you can justify it as themed entertainment, it counts.
Okay. I think movies are pretty much doing the job, especially with animated movies nowadays. I guess one example, The Strange World. I mean, people call it woke, but still, it's they had like could be like a dog in there. There was a mixed couple. There was a gay character. The whole storyline was about taking care of the earth. I felt noticed, you know, because I'm one of those characters in that movie. My whole story wasn't completely told, but I can identify with one of the characters in there. So it felt like I was seen, you know, because people, you see a lot of movies nowadays and you can't really relate to them. I can't stand romantic comedies because I can't relate to any of them. But there's some movies there I can see my personality in it, and I feel more drawn to see it again and to, to advertise it more and to tell more people about it and to develop more stories like that. You know, I think stories that have personalities that you see every day are the ones that are more interesting. You know, I like stories that that I can relate to, that have personalities with people, with characters that I've seen before, like in high school or at work. You know, those are the stories that I really like to see. So in terms of theme park rides, not I mean, there's a lot of things that they try to emulate. I mean, Epcot's the only one that comes to mind right now. But I think in terms of rides and attractions, the way it's presented is what matters the most. Like if you're trying to develop, like I said, like a cultural themed ride, those are the ones that you have to take a deep dive into history and to the people and things like that. So those are things that I look forward to.
I saw this, it must have been 5-ish years ago, this small, very intimate, immersive production of a play called Grief. And why it was really unique and why I felt seen was because they only had audiences of, I think, 10 or less. And one of the rules, one of the onboarding sort of tips was that you're not allowed to talk to any cast members and or to any of the audience members. And I didn't know what I was in for, had no expectations, which I think is the best. And it turns out it was in the director's home. And I'm so bummed that I'm blanking on the production company because they deserve their due praise. But for me, it was an experience where it didn't have anything to do with race or identity. It had to do with being human. And the short version of the story was just about this family of 4 who had just, one of the siblings passed away, and you don't really understand why, but you really just watch this family sort of go through moments throughout their day, and you're just watching as a spectator, and it goes through every emotion that you could think of when you're processing grief, and it was a tender time for me and a lot of other people in the audience. So I just left feeling transformed. I left going, oh, this, to just like not have a lot of spectacle, to not have a lot of anything other than just like a story and an audience and a point of view. I will never stop talking about that show. It changed me at the core in the best way possible. So that's when that.
If you remember the name, send me a text.
I will do
Thank
that for sure.
I would say for me, I mean, there's not, I'm talking about thinking about experiences. I don't know if there are experiences from my identity standpoint that I could point to and say like, oh, I connected super well. I think there are moments of recognition that I think especially immersive theater has gotten better at in terms of recognizing you as a person and your role in the story. And I think even you carry that on to like the theme park world. But in terms of like that like resonated with my identity. I don't know yet. I don't know yet. Like, because I not that it again recognized me as human, but I don't know if I felt like all the things that make me, not necessarily just human, but make me Kevin, were acknowledged. So I think again that's why I'm so passionate around, I think, relevancy as it relates to design, because I think that's a huge opportunity that we could focus more on, at least in the themed entertainment world.
Excellent. I want to take it back a little bit just to get some like clear answers out there. How did you find a mentor? How can someone else find a mentor? What is expected when you are a mentee?
Personally, when I was at Gary Goddard, we were working on a project, and Richard Gutierrez was working right behind me, and I saw his work and I wanted to cry because I was like, how in the world can you do that? How do you draw like that? Teach me. And I have been in touch with them for the past like 20 years or something like that. And it's just his work, like just, I was like, God, how can you do that? I mean, I wanted to draw like him. And there were other artists I wanted to draw like too. And I just keep looking at their work and, just following their methods of how to do certain things. But my sister is probably like one of the biggest mentors in my life. My mom and my sister. My mom was like my very first best friend. And it really hurt me when she passed away about 2 years ago. And I mean, everything I do now is for her because she's the first one that believed in me. She wanted me to go to art school. And, every time I do something and now my life is changing, like I'm working more in the field, I always think about her. I mean, I see her every night when I go to bed, when I go to sleep, I always dream about her. And it's just that I feel like she's still here with me, but I really wish I could see her, in real life, because I want to tell her that, Mom, I'm doing it. I mean, you helped me, you supported me, you were my first cheerleader, and I'm doing it. And I'm going to go all the way and build my theme park for you. So my sister is like my second mom. And so she's always on my tail, making sure I do certain things a certain way. She's a little more aggressive in her tactics, but it works because, her heart is there, and she supports me, and she's always there when I need her. Even when I don't need her, she's there. So she's like probably my second mentor. And then Richard Gutierrez is my third mentor. So the mentors that I choose are the people that have a real profound emotional effect on my life and my talent, and keep me going, to keep me motivated, to keep making the best of myself. So those are the ones I choose.
I would say you can find mentors. I mean, I don't want to be generic or cliche, but anywhere. In my mind, a mentor, offers something professionally or has some sort of trajectory professionally that you are inspired by, attracted to, you're curious about. And I don't know if this is okay to say, but I'm going to say it. I haven't had many experiences where I've reached out to somebody and I was curious to get to know more about what they do, or, just expand my knowledge, and got no. I just find that most people in this industry, they like to talk to people about what they do. They like to talk about themselves. They like to learn more about other people and what they're doing. So maybe I've just had a lot of luck in that realm, but I tend to go directly to the source and just start a conversation. LinkedIn, social media, email, community, having your community reach out if you have mutual connections. But I just treat, in my mind, it's like everybody has their own story and everybody's a human. So it's really just me trying to get to know more, and hopefully that door can stay open when a mentee might want to come and learn something from me. I can, give that back as well. And then the second part of your question was, what is expected of mentees?
Yeah.
I don't even know that I have the best answer for that, but what comes to mind is to stay open, to stay curious, To Theron's point earlier, be open to learning new things. It will only help you in the role that you're in or the future role that you're going to get. And I would always say, like, I think being a mentee means always staying prepared for whatever you're actually looking for. So if it's a certain role, if you want to be at a certain company, if it's a goal that you have in mind, just staying ready and prepared and continuing to do the work that it takes to get you there.
Always expect the unexpected in this industry.
That feels
Because
right.
you never know if you're going to be working one day or be off the project the next day.
For real though.
Mhm.
And I would just say I agree with Niyia. I think I don't think I've really relatively gotten no a lot of times when you ask for mentorship. I mean, throughout my career, I've asked people at the mid management level all the way up to like the higher levels, right? But because I think it's really around, do you have I don't know, a eagerness, if you will, to learn. And I think people can see that if you have an eagerness to learn. But I think with that being said, you know, in many cases, as a mentee, I think your role should be to figure out how to ask specific questions. You may not necessarily know all the questions, so maybe it's starter questions, but I do think specific questions are better. And I think it's about when the mentor gives you advice, trying to apply that advice and then coming back with how that went, right? Because then I think it becomes kind of more of the growth like relationship. The other thing I would actually throw out there too is I think a lot of times people think mentorship is like older people mentoring younger people, and it can be that way. But I think in the world that we live in today, when the world is changing so fast, I think it could actually go the other way too. There's actually a great book, and I can't remember what it's called now, by one of the early leaders on Airbnb, but that was one of their biggest successes, was the blended relationships from a leadership perspective that they had between the young people and the old people, right? The people who understood how younger people wanted to access technology, and the older generation who understood how the hotel industry worked. And those coming of the minds together, if you will, formed, you know, what we have today. And I think that's a lesson to be learned, I think, in any industry, is that mentorship doesn't have to go one way. Everybody has a life experience, and I think everybody has something to share. And I think it's important that people listen to those life experiences, because there might be nuggets of gold in there that you never realize. I don't know. I think mentorship can go, like I said, both ways, and just finding ways that you can kind of continue to learn, I think, is the way to go about it.
And to go off what Kevin,
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to add one more thing. I think you will need mentors for different things as you go in your career. So I think depending on what level you are in your career, your mentors will change. You know, as you go more senior, you might need mentors you never thought you needed, like people who understand marketing or people who understand finance or things like that. So I think it just depends on where you grow, or where you want to grow, that your mentors will change. And so with that being said, I think it's important to have many different mentors.
And to go off what Kevin said, I think it doesn't matter if your mentor is older than you or younger than you, because I'm still learning from people who are a lot younger than me. I mean, I go on ArtStation and I look at all the work that they've done, and they're all like in their 20s. I'm 47. And so when I look at people's work, I'm like, I can still learn this because I'm not dead yet. I'm still learning. My brain is still working. There's a lot of things I can learn. You know, it doesn't matter how old you are. You still are able to acquire knowledge every single day of your life. You are learning new things every single day. And so I think that having a mentor is something that's not always necessary, but there could be like one or two people that you always look up to in terms of learning new stuff. But when you want to learn things, you could be your own mentor. You could just look up to yourself and and find anything that you want to find on the internet. We live in a day and age where anything you want to learn is on a computer. You just have to talk to Siri or just type it in Google, and you can learn anything you want to learn. But if you have someone that you look up to and admire and practically worship what they do, you can go on LinkedIn and legally stalk them if you wanted to, because it's free, you know? So that's what I did. And I've gotten in touch with a lot of people that I totally admire, and they're in my network, and I can ask them questions whenever I want to. I am so thankful for that. I mean, when I was younger, I can't believe I'm saying that, when I was younger, that we didn't have an option like that. So when I graduated in 2004, I felt like I was kicked out of the nest, you know, out of college, and I was there to fend for myself, and I didn't know where to go. And so that's why I didn't work for like 4 or 5 years. And luckily TEA was still there. They still had a directory, and I just went through the directory and said, you know what, I'm going to try one more time. This is what I was born to do. I'm going to look for a job. And that's when Forbes found me from Gary Goddard. And I finally got my first job in the theme park industry at that time. And so I was stoked. I was so stoked. But now it's so much more accessible in terms of reaching out to different companies and reaching out to different people in the field. And like I said, networking and people is the best way to go. Jobs and companies, yeah, but people hire people. So you need to be a good person and a really cool person, you know, understandable and open to new things to get what you want.
All right. I don't know if there are any questions yet from the audience. Are there?
Not quite yet, but if people have questions, they can drop them in the chat.
I have a question. But yes, as I'm asking my question, please put your questions in the chat. What are your hopes and dreams? What do you want to personally accomplish in your career? We know Theron wants his theme park. What else do you want? I was going to ask the Theron.
Oh,
What kind of theme park do you want?
Sorry.
We didn't
Like,
hear you.
what is your long-term goal?
Yeah.
My theme park is still on my mind, but it's starting to be modified into a different concept. And I mentioned it before to other people. It's called Da Vinci Square, and it's pretty much a business where I want to team theme park design companies with retail brands, and together their union would create some type of a interactive retail experience at this place called Da Vinci Square. But Da Vinci Square is all about knowledge and learning and life enrichment. And so I want everything there to be about education and the arts and learning new things. And so I wanted to have like a workshop, like an animator's workshop there. Every single type of retail brand, instead of a mall where they just have clothing stores, you would have retail experiences throughout the mall. So it's almost like going to a theme park, but instead of rides, there's retail attractions that feature their brand. And so each one of those little attractions features a story about that brand. And then there will also be themed restaurants, live action entertainment. There'd be like a whole themed, little mini themed indoor theme park that has to deal with Galileo and all the different secret things that we weren't supposed to learn because the Catholic Church said no. So that's more of a concept that I'm working on and trying to get it together, and hopefully have a business plan made by the end of the year. So I'm still trucking forward with that one, see what happens.
I would say a dream that I have is I would like to see more immersive theater experiences tour. I just find that is something that it's a trend that's slowly happening. I know Capital W and in LA, they have a couple of pieces that they do in multiple cities, but I think there's just such an opportunity for immersive to scale in a way that it maybe hasn't been able to do before. I want to see some of the performances I've seen in LA and New York and Japan. I want to know how something like that even happens. Are we changing venues every time? Just like, what are the logistics? It kind of excites me, but also terrifies me. What does the insurance look like? So yeah, I want to see more immersive experiences tour. I think just like theater has sort of found a way to do that and really, like, you know, revolutionize the industry in a way. I think immersive can do the same thing. So
I'd
like to be a part of that, however that happens.
I wanted to tell you, Niyia, that there is this experience called the Willows in Los Angeles. I don't know if you heard about that. Have you heard that?
Yes, yeah, they do amazing work, that company.
That was like being in a movie for 2 hours because everyone, all the actors were improvising it for 2 hours. And they were spot on with their characters. They were like crying and yelling, and they were just superb in every single thing that they did. I was so impressed with that. So I would love to see more stuff like that too. Yeah, because they did a really good job.
Yeah, shout out to those actors. That is, I mean, to interact with the human that close, it just it's a whole skill set that I could never. So I'm always just in awe.
Crazy because they know what to say regardless of what you're going to say. I mean, they always have different people coming in, and they just roll with it, and they still stay in character the whole time. It was so cool. So cool.
I'd love to hear that.
Hey, Sarah.
Yes.
We've got 2 questions from the viewing audience.
Questions.
Yeah, I'm going to go with this one first. Regarding companies that are open to more diverse talents and experiences, but struggling to actually change what they do, what are the signs that a company is worth sticking with and working with, even when they're making mistakes? And what are some signs the company is just giving lip service and it's time to get out?
Oh, that is a fantastic question.
Take a minute.
You got that?
That's a big one.
I would feel like, are you saying that if there's a company that says that doesn't do what they're actually saying, like they're just giving lip service, like they're not really involving inclusion within their staff?
Yeah, I think all companies right now, like, it's cool to be diverse. Like, it's not cool to not be diverse anymore.
Right.
So what are signs that companies are actually walking the walk?
I tend to say,
oh, go ahead.
no, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Very fine.
Okay. I tend to say I guess it's where they put their money, right? What are they willing to invest in? What, if, I guess the best way to think of it is, if you've been with a company for a certain amount of time and you've noticed some issues that haven't been resolved, is there insight on why that's happening? Have they started but had to pivot? Sometimes I think it's a sign that it might not be worth sticking with a company if you're really not seeing any movement that impacts the work that you're doing, right? I think a lot of things can happen behind closed doors, but if it's not changing your experience, if you're still coming in and, you know, you're just not enjoying the work, and you can recognize that it's because the environment that you're in is not safe, or you can't thrive in it, or it has too many problems for you to sort of, you know, work through, then I just think when it gets to that point, it's difficult to push through if the mental health isn't being supported in that role or in that environment. So if you're listening to yourself and it's genuinely taking more effort to just perform the role as is, then I think that would be a time to at least investigate, like, is it worth it? Are you getting what you put in? Did what the company promised you in the beginning change? And you just need to be realistic about that. Just having a conversation with yourself. I also think, you know, to the people that you have connected with at the company that you work at, have those conversations. I mean, 9 times out of 10, you're usually not the only one having an experience like that. And so if there are ways that you can share information and learn about how things are either improving or not improving, I think that's also going to be helpful. And then the last thing I would say is websites like Glassdoor, wherever you get Yelp reviews from former employees. I take everything with a grain of salt, but I do think if there are a lot of common experiences that are negative by people of color, and they're explicitly saying that in their reviews, I don't think there's a reason to ignore that if it's repeated through a lot of different people's sort of feedback. So I guess those are that's my thoughts.
I think wherever you go, it's always good to do your homework, do your research. Like you said, look on Yelp, look at the reviews. There's different websites where you can look at the reviews from former past employees. If you work in an environment that you feel is toxic, you don't need to be there. You need to get yourself out of there, because you can feel toxicity as if it's something tangible. And if you don't feel like you're being accepted or listened to, you just find other different options, because there are other companies that are out there that are more open to all types of genres and ethnicities and things like that. And so, judging from my personal viewpoint, I'm a freelance worker, so I mostly work at home. So I don't have that problem, except when I'm dealing with people online. But I'm not dealing with anybody face to face most of the time. It's just all telecommunications. But I just feel like if you have those feelings where you're not being listened to, that your needs aren't being met like you want them to be, then it's just time to make other arrangements.
And if I can also add, if it's a specific issue or couple of issues that you have elevated to leadership in some way, and you continue to check on it and there's no movement, you're the only one having that conversation, I find that that's usually a good sign to just maybe reevaluate if that's a good fit for you. Because a lot of times, again, investment doesn't necessarily mean money. It can mean just listening and applying whatever fits from that conversation. So yeah, I would say that's another way to just see if a company actually is a good fit for you and if you should stay or leave.
Yeah, the worst place you can be is working for a company where you have no voice. If you speak to them respectfully and make your concerns known, and no one's listening and no one's making any change, and you're doing it over and over again, your mental health is more important. So that's what I've always felt. Just have your voice heard. That's all I have to say. I mean, if you're not being heard, even though you speak over and over again about certain things that bother you, and nothing's happening, things are stagnant or just getting worse, then that's the time to make a change.
So we are at time. I want Kevin to answer though. Go.
Okay.
Oh, I'll just be very quick. I think because I work in a big company, so it might be different for smaller companies. I'm not sure, but one of the things that I find to look out for, whether it's just lip service or not, I think is to look at what they're doing inside the company versus outside the company. I mean, bigger brands often put a lot of PR into making things, and then the inside of the company doesn't change. And what has changed look like and feel like? I often say it feels like friction a little bit. I think when you're inside the beast and the company is changing, if the company is really committed to change, you will literally see changes in the way meetings are organized, who's invited to the meetings, strategies around projects, right? And that all sets the tone for the change. But if those things aren't happening, usually that means it's a lot of lip service, in my opinion, from my experience, is that it looks good on paper to the public, but internally that change is not being created. So you'll feel it, I think, if change is actually happening, even if it's small, because again, the way the meetings are going to be, the people they might even hire, to bring in terms of leadership might be different. We just got at WDI, we just got an entirely new, president who traditionally doesn't come from the theme park world, but it was awesome. Like she's amazing. And she has new ideas and things like that, which I think is fantastic. And so you're going to feel a little friction if change is actually happening. And if you're elevating these things, as Niyia said, and that friction is not happening and culturally, then most likely there's no change actually happening. So
You have to see it happen for it to happen. Because if people talk about it and then you don't see it happening, don't believe them, because it's just all talk.
yeah.
So Sarah, you said that we're at time. Is there a way that we can respond to the other questions? I don't know, in a written format, or
That is a good question
that go?
for
How does-
Courtney and Jeff, I think.
What was the last
Oh,
question?
Oh, hello.
Uh,
If people are willing to hang out, we can certainly answer. There are two other questions on here. So
oh,
if
big
people are
time.
willing to hang out, why not?
Okay.
Why not? Great.
Hey,
Yeah.
Lacey Campbell would love to hear what's feeding your brains right now and shaping your thinking. What are you visiting, reading, or watching, or excited to in the near future?
I'm watching Game of Thrones. No, I was kidding. I mean, I just started watching that, but God, the first episode, cutting off people's heads and stuff. It's crazy. I'm trying to focus more on developing a business plan, and I don't know how to do that. So I've been asking around different people in the industry, how do I get these numbers to develop a case where I can convince investors to spend millions of dollars on my idea. So that's what I've been working on lately. I listen to Mel Robbins. I love her. She's a life coach. And I felt like since I started listening to her, probably about less than 2 years ago, that my life has changed. And she has a lot of life lessons that were always there that I just never acknowledged. And I just feel like she helped me a lot and helping me change my life. So I'm changing my life for the better. So that's what I'm going through.
What was that coach's name again?
Mel Robbins.
Mel Robbins. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. She's the one that started the 5-second rule. Is it 5 seconds?
Excellent.
Yeah, 5-second rule.
Personally, for me, what I'm actually paying attention to a lot is actually the fashion industry, particularly because there's been a lot of transformation in the fashion industry the last few years, not only from an experience standpoint, but brand standpoint, fashion, et cetera, because of the pandemic. And what's interesting about fashion is that there's more iteration. And so it's actually, I would say fashion is actually the leading indicator creatively of, I think, where the world is going. And you can kind of see a lot of brands like Nike, Louis Vuitton, et cetera, that are building almost like microcosms of culture for people to feel celebrated, which is a thing that fashion didn't really do in the past. And now you have huge conventions that people are going to, which is something I think that's the themed entertainment industry can learn from a little bit, just again, because of the speed at which a lot of those brands are moving. The other thing I think that's interesting around fashion is the collaboration that's happening. You see a lot of collaboration collections that are happening, but also I would say like Christian Dior, for example, is very interesting right now because they're kind of on this I guess journey, if you will, to return craftsmanship and highlight craftsmanship to the world. And so their new creative director is pulling all these craftsmen that really a lot of people just thought their craft or art was like lost, and they're creating jobs for them, and they're building the next fashion ideas of Dior. And these places are in Pakistan, in Greece and Africa, like they're all over the place. And it's interesting to see how that collaboration can produce innovation and new ideas. Because I think the great thing about the internet is that it has a bunch of ideas. The bad thing about the internet, it has a bunch of the same ideas. So, one of the beautiful things about collaboration is that it creates an opportunity to to create something new, because two people who have two different stories are coming together and trying to find out what they can create from that. And I think that's the same energy that, like, you know, that jazz created, that led to like rock and roll, and led to pop music, and led to all these different types of things that we consider kind of current music today. And so fashion to me is one of those things that I think is really, really exciting area to watch right now. And how they are achieving relevancy and building culture.
I'm finishing up White Lotus season 2. It's been wild. Please, no spoilers. I wouldn't actually mind seeing that become something that's a themed entertainment experience. Food for thought for anybody that wants to run with that. And then in my non-existent free time, I'm interested in this year actually kicking off a little voiceover studio here in my home, and taking on some more voiceover opportunities. So just learning more about microphones and everything that goes into that has been interesting, because it's different from the world I normally work in, but it's still cool to learn about. Yeah, and I've been listening to Moses Sumney a lot. I don't know how many of you all know this artist, but the Yeti mic. Oh, thank you, Lisa. Moses, I randomly discovered their music, and wow, it's powerful, and the lyrics are amazing. So that's what I've been listening to and what's been feeding my brain lately.
We got one more question. I mean, Sarah, we do also want to hear what's feeding your brain as well.
Oh, I play so much Dungeons and Dragons, like so
Stranger
much.
Things.
That is my brain a lot of the time. I also sew. I really like making things that are physical, because I spend so much time in the digital. I like making things that have curves. It's wild. It can stand up by itself. It's cool. That's what I do. Lisa, we'll play D&D. I know Lacey also. I owe Lacey a game too. We'll make it a thing.
Oh man, this is going to be great.
And
We got
thanks for the mic suggestion. I'm definitely going to look that up.
we got one more question from the audience. Grace Ritchie asking, how do you help push from diversity, the buzzword, to an actual experience of diversity?
Oh,
Um,
no, go ahead.
Go ahead. That's your department.
No, I'll take a stab at it. It's interesting because from a Disney perspective, we kind of think about diversity, for example, actually as a job of HR. And what I mean by that is diversity, equity, inclusion from a business standpoint. I think, or not inclusion, sorry, diversity and equity. I think from a business standpoint is really about like, how do you make the team more diverse, right? So you produce more diverse products, which is why I think our team is called Inclusive Strategies, because I think that the conversation it's not necessarily around diversity, but it's around inclusion. In a sense that when I create a story, who needs to be at the table to help tell that and craft that story? And so it's around the strategy of inclusion, not the strategy of diversity, because I could have a diverse table and not a single person knows about, I don't know, Polynesian culture. Doesn't really help you. But when you talk about how do you create an inclusive story that authentically represents Polynesian culture, now I have to include the Polynesians into that strategy in order to deliver that work. And so I think it really is moving, in my opinion, from diversity to inclusion, and thinking about how do you make a bigger table? How do you shape that bigger table so that you can, in the end, create a product that authentically reflects the people that it's supposed to be about.
And I think diversity is all talk until you actually see it. It's diversity, you're going to see it. It's not something that's just said. You're going to see different people of different backgrounds. You're going to see them different areas. You're going to see different people, period. That's diversity. And it's, instead of just talking about it, you're going to actually do it. There's always stories and movies and things that talk about how this is like a different story for different people, but it's basically like a rehash, and it just includes certain characters, but it doesn't always tell their story. So it's not always just because they have a different person of a different color, it doesn't always tell their whole story, and then that's just talk. But it's something that you're actually going to see and feel. So it's when you see it, you'll know it. It's not just a buzzword. You're going to see all the different backgrounds doing what they're supposed to be doing, telling their own stories, things that you've never heard before. And I think once you learn more about different people's stories, that's truly diverse.
And in my opinion, I think once the word diversity is actually broken out into a plan with goals and check-ins and accountability and responsible individuals attached to each thing, that's when it's not just diversity. That's when it's a program. It's an initiative. It is a funded project. It is something other than just, we want this, or we don't have this, how do we get this? I think once you have enough people having a conversation of who's not represented, why are they not represented? And to Kevin's point, what product are we creating that would be inspiring or connects to, the community that for whatever reason, we just haven't made that connection with in the past. So I think, yeah, once it's not just like a generalized, we need diversity, which generally never works. Once it becomes something that is an action plan, that has funding, that has resourcing, just like any other project you're working on, I think that's when you'll see what diversity implemented looks like.
And I think there just needs more general conversation around the benefits of diversity. I think a lot of times people look at it as a checkbox, if that makes sense, like a statistic that I have to check because I'm getting some type of social pressure that everyone says I need to be diverse, and so therefore I'm doing it. I actually think there's a better benefit and conversation around that benefit that isn't had as often, and that is, I think when we put a bunch of diverse people together, the product that we went into the room, or the product or experience that we thought the experience would be without the diversity, is or usually lower than I think if you bring all those people together from different diverse backgrounds. And we know this, I think, even from the themed entertainment world. We can only do what we do because of the show lighters, show lighting designers, the creative directors, the artists, all those people coming together to build something amazing. And I think the same conversation should be had around diversity. One of the most interesting things that I always found when I moved from Texas to California was the amount of fusion cuisines that they had in California, and how amazing, different inventions, if you will, people were creating with food, and there's things that my tongue would have never tasted if those things didn't connect. And so I think a lot of times it's diversity gets posted or advertised sometimes as a zero-sum game, but it really is a positive sum game. There's a lot more that comes out of it that I think people should realize. And I think once people do realize that, the conversation will stop being around diversity, because it will just feel that's the way it's always should have been, because that's where the best ideas come from. And I don't think that's the conversation that's being had often around diversity. It often is one of societal pressures that I need to be diverse because society wants me to be diverse.
That's marvelous. Jeff, I saw one more question pop up if you were going to read it.
Oh, sure. Let me
Yeah.
scroll back here. Excuse me.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Sorry.
No, all good. This is my job. This is why I'm here. Eric Adams is wondering, have you ever turned down a job or gig because leadership was too white or too intractable?
No. Retractable, I don't know what that means, but I've never looked at people's skin color as a reason to turn down a gig. It's all about their track record. Oh, unless you're talking about track record, the things that they've done. No, because the people I worked for, they've already had a track record. They have a reputation. So the people I worked with have always been positive people. I had a negative situation back in high school, but that doesn't really apply to what the industry is now. Um, I never turned down a gig just because of the way the people looked in the office. I've never done that before.
I
Yeah.
haven't.
Oh,
Oh,
I
that
was
was,
gonna say I haven't either. I mean, there's been situations I feel like where once you're part of the team, you might feel to what Theron was saying earlier, your voice is not heard, and it can become internally frustrating, and you may leave at that point, right? But I don't think I've actually turned down a gig at the door because I think there's always an opportunity to learn something. Um, and so, you know, you take that opportunity with the intent of, I guess, it's an opportunity to create work, but also to learn. And it may not go the way that you want to, which means that, you know, you can part ways, but at least you walked away and said, well, I learned this little thing. They weren't doing it the way I think it should have been done, right? That was authentic to my voice or whatever. But the next job, I can go take that information and spin it around and put it in my own voice and create a product or experience that resonates with the people that I'm trying to actually reach. Which I actually think is like how a lot of entrepreneurs are born and create all these companies, is because it's out of frustration, right? Like they've been telling executives like we should do this, and someone said no, and then they went to go create their own company, and then that company created their own competition. But I think it's kind of the same thing here. I don't think I've ever turned down an opportunity though.
I was just gonna say, I haven't, but I would also add that there would be a lot of privilege to move in this world, making decisions like that. Which I can't speak to whether I have that or not, but yeah. I think it would be difficult to maneuver in this industry and a lot of others if that's was my sort of thinking around companies or organizations that are quote unquote too homogenous.
Right. Yeah, I would never limit myself under those boundaries, because even if I'm the only one that looks like me in the office, I would feel more empowered, because then I felt like I have a right to be there because they looked at my credentials and whatever my work and stuff, and then they felt it nice enough to bring me into the office and have me there. I would feel honored that I would be a part of that. But I would never limit myself and just stop and look, oh, there's not enough Black people here, I'm not going to work here. I would never think that.
Cool. Any further questions? This has been absolutely delightful. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming. This has been absolutely marvelous. I'm so happy I got to be here. The TEA does these events regularly, so check back in. They're usually pretty cool. And I'll see y'all around.
Right.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.